On the back of that video about habeas corpus, somebody asked, what is corpus delecti? That's an interesting phrase because people get it wrong, and somebody once got it fatally wrong. Basically, it just means the body of evidence. In other words, before you charge somebody with a crime, you have to have some evidence to show what we would now call the elements of the offence were all present. So if you wanted to charge somebody with theft, you'd have to show there was a theft. So you'd need some evidence that there'd been some property that belonged to another person that was dishonestly appropriated and the person never got it back. Or at least whoever took it never intended to give it back. So that's the corpus delecti of theft. For murder, it's that somebody inflicted an injury and somebody died as a result. In the olden days, you had to die within a year and a day. They changed that because obviously you've got life support now, so you don't really want the CPS hanging around, by the off switch just to make their life easier. So there's no limit now, although if it's after 3 years that the death occurs after the injury, then you need the consent of the DPP to prosecute. But somebody once got that wrong. A guy called John Haigh, the acid bath murderer. Basically, he was just a fraudster and he set himself up as a fake solicitor and he would embezzle people out of money. But he got caught. He got sent to prison for 4 years and he thought that was because he'd left the witnesses alive. So he had a cunning plan, which was basically to dispose of all the witnesses in an acid bath. And he was caught, but he sat in the police interview and he was very smug because he believed corpus delecti meant you had to show a body. You had to actually show the body to prosecute a murder case. Now, that used to be the rule in a lot of jurisdictions, including this country. However, that changed. And they said, no, mate, corpus delecti, body of evidence, just means we have to have some evidence. And our evidence is that you've definitely embezzled some people and everybody you embezzle vanishes. So we think that's a prima facie case for murder. Also, actually, he wasn't as good as disposing of bodies as he thought, and there actually was some physical evidence left. But when that was announced to him, he he did the Blackadder thing of the worst portrayal of somebody suffering from insanity ever. But they didn't buy it, and he was convicted and hanged. But there you go. So like I say, it's a phrase that isn't used so much now. Now we'd say elements of the offence. But that's all corpus delecti means. So, it doesn't have to be anything to do with bodies. You can convict on murder just on circumstantial evidence. And again, to go on circumstantial evidence, another phrase that's perhaps misunderstood. There is this idea that, it was just circumstantial evidence. But circumstantial evidence is often the strongest evidence there is. I mean, compare it to direct evidence. Somebody say they saw the crime being committed. Well, ID evidence is notoriously unreliable. There are sorts of tests for it to be admitted in the first place. It can't just be a fleeting glimpse. But also juries are warned about the dangers because, we've all seen somebody we could have sworn was somebody else. So that was the sort of general idea there. Similarly, confessions. Confessions can be unreliable. People confess to all sorts of things they didn't do for all sorts of reasons. And again, there's in PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, Section 76. That covers the admissibility of interviews. And interviews can be excluded, quotes, notwithstanding they may be true, just because of the unreliability of them. Whereas circumstantial evidence, what are the circumstances? Well, somebody's gone missing, you now have all their money and you were the last person they were seen talking to. Well, that's just circumstantial evidence, but it was enough to convict John Haigh and also all the actual scientific evidence that went in as well. But anyway, as always, hope you found that vaguely interesting. If you did, please consider clicking the like button, subscribing and sharing. But like I always say, you don't have to. I'm quite happy just to come to places like this and ramble for a bit.